We're going to go ahead and bring on Andrew Brosnan. He's the principal analyst at Omdia, based in Oxford in the UK. We're going to get him on screen here. Andrew, thank you for joining us. How are you?
I'm doing well, Michael. How are you?
Great to have you here. We're doing great. It's been an excellent summit so far. Very excited to get your insights and your takes into the conference here with the discussions that we've already had. We obviously just had a great chat with TrustStamp, and I think we're going to be able to follow up on some of this with your discussions into the AI space, specifically AI in healthcare. Before we get into the industry discussion, let's learn a little bit more about Omdia. Can you tell us more about what you guys do and what the company is all about?
Omdia is a tech market analyst firm, and we cover the tech markets. We have a broad range of coverage. I personally sit on an AI team where we cover many aspects of artificial intelligence, from semiconductors through to the application of AI in different vertical markets.
Outstanding. So let's go ahead and break into it by talking a little bit about your current position in the market and what Omdia does when it comes to the healthcare industry. Typically, as we talked about yesterday when we were preparing for the show today, healthcare typically a very slow-moving industry in terms of adopting new technologies, new standards, new practices. Can you talk a little bit, maybe expansively, about the healthcare industry as a whole and why they're so slow to adopt new practices and new things that can help them?
Yes, well, I think first and foremost, the healthcare industry tends to be quite risk averse, and rightfully so, because there's patient welfare and health involved, and so they're typically cautious when it comes to adopting new technologies. Until they're validated, and because they're afraid to put patient health at risk, essentially. So typically, traditionally, the healthcare industry as a whole, obviously, there's different parts within healthcare that would adopt a technology faster, but on the whole, it tends to be more conservative in the adoption of new technologies.
Understood. And obviously, it's clear, with what we just talked about, that they're slow to adopt, almost any new technologies. But let's talk about the application specifically of AI in healthcare. Why does this seem like such a big opportunity? And what do you guys see healthcare doing about it right now?
I think that artificial intelligence has tremendous potential within the healthcare sector. We're seeing broad experimentation and adoption of the technology across the sector in many different areas. But I think first and foremost, there's tremendous amount of administrative burden upon healthcare professionals. I think there's estimates out there saying that doctors spend anywhere from 25 to 50% of their time on administrative tasks, and so that we see that as sort of one of the early or low-hanging fruit in the space where AI can make a difference, and we think that early adoption will focus sort of in that area, helping to automate processes and free up time for doctors to spend more time with patients, and also bringing further operational efficiencies within hospitals and doctor practices as well. And then, in the pharmaceutical sector, we're also seeing adoption of artificial intelligence, for example, in drug discovery, in drug development, for example, to help help identify new medicines and bring them to market faster.
Got it. And so what are some of the ways that you guys kind of penetrate this market in healthcare, especially when it comes to the insights that you provide, right? What do the relationships look like? What does the research look like? What's your process for kind of helping the healthcare industry to sort of adopt the new technologies that we have available?
We tend to do a lot of research on trends within the industry, forward-looking market forecasts, for example. Where do we see the overall spend moving? How fast is that spend increasing, for example? Also, a lot of market research around KPIs and best practices as well. So, we tend to do a lot of market research and trend analysis and forecasting.
Got it. Take us through maybe the cost side of this a little bit, right? When it comes to, maybe the pricing side and the financial side of what the application of AI in healthcare could be, is this going to offer cost savings? Is it going to be more expensive for some of these companies to apply AI and things like that? What does the financial side of this revolution look like?
Well, yeah, as I alluded to earlier, I think we'll see in the short term, a lot of interest and investment in providing operational efficiencies, right? So, like I mentioned, there's a tremendous amount of administrative overhead, in care delivery, for example, and a lot of the emerging AI tools, such as large language models and generative AI, have their roots in natural language processing, right? And so they're well suited to automate a lot of tasks. And in healthcare, a lot of data is what we call unstructured data, right? Doctors' notes, audio files, etc. And these large language models and generative AI in particular can help to mine this tremendous amount of unstructured data that we have in the healthcare system, and to help derive insights, and also can be used to convert some of that unstructured data into structured data, right? And so also, for example, in claims processing, there's a lot of administrative tasks involved in coding of medical conditions and claims processing, and we see that as another area where AI can certainly bring about further efficiencies, and also then address the operational cost of delivering care, not just within the United States, but also obviously worldwide.
Absolutely. And you mentioned something there too. Let's take a step away from just specifically the healthcare industry for just a moment. Let's talk a little bit more about generative AI, right? It's obviously one of the hottest buzzwords and topics
Yep.
of today's world. What is the near future for generative AI beyond healthcare, beyond just this specific discussion? But what else is going to happen with generative AI in the rest of this year in 2024? What do you see the future being like?
Well, I think there's obviously we sort of entered into a very fast pace of development, and we see lots of, as you may know, lots of large tech companies competing in this space, right? And so I think we're going to see. I think GPT-5, ChatGPT-5 is earmarked to come out in 2024 rather, sorry. And so I think we're sort of a crossroads, if you will. I think there's a lot of discussion about whether we'll continue to see large models, in very large in parameter size. But then, we're also seeing the evolution of smaller models, which are better designed for specific tasks. So I really see future generative AI sort of going in two different paths here, towards the very, very large models that generalize well, to smaller models that can be fine-tuned on single GPUs, for example. So really bringing down the cost and operation of some of these generative models.
100%. Let's maybe talk about for a second too some of the, not necessarily risks, but some of the aversions that some people might have to the approach and the idea of AI in the first place, right? I feel that there's a big discussion right now in the industry about the uses and the applications of AI that so much of, especially the younger generation, is very, very excited about. And some of the more traditional generations might be concerned about AI in industries like healthcare, where so typically the prevailing idea has been it's a human based industry, right? It's a human thing to have a doctor doing your data and doing things like that. What are some of the aversions that you think the general public or older generations may not realize that AI is really going to be able to solve and fix?
Well, yeah, I think the application of AI in healthcare holds tremendous potential to further personalized medicine. For example, has a tremendous potential to analyze large amounts of data and like I mentioned before, unstructured data and pull out insights within that that large corpus of unstructured data, and also the ability to combine different types of data together. So, for example, your text-based data in electronic medical records with medical imaging, for example. And so I think, what we're seeing is, like I said, a step towards personalized medicine, where you will actually be able to tailor the treatment or the treatment pathway towards the individual to a greater degree, for example. So we might see, further stratification, if you will, of the standard practice, right? So, for example, the standard practice might be three doses or three treatments of a particular therapeutic, where in actuality, we find, looking at large patient populations, that patients of this particular type really only require two, let's say, for example. So, I think it will be a data-driven approach towards the application of care.
That makes a lot of sense.
Is one area where I think we'll start seeing impact in that space as well. But I think also, for example, in radiology, artificial intelligence can look at the entire scan at once, rather than one particular area, right? And so, we're seeing automation or triage of CT scans or MRI scans with artificial intelligence, and then flagging those that then might require further review by a radiologist, right? So, there's also other applications here where we can see artificial intelligence helping to triage patients and help with risk stratification of patients.
Absolutely. So that brings up another interesting question for me, right? When you look at, especially here in the United States, right, healthcare is a very, very common problem for so many people here. The healthcare system is oftentimes taxed with the number of people that have issues and illnesses and need to be treated. And of course, the costs in the healthcare system here in the US are absolutely absurd too. When you look at the cost of prescription drugs and you look at the cost of treatments, when you look at the AI application for healthcare, is there going to be, we talked about the simplification of certain tasks, and we talked about the costs and the savings that may be in operations. So when you look at, the opportunity for maybe more people to be able to be treated by reducing the time necessary for some of these manual tasks, do you think that's going to be an advantage too? Is more people being able to be treated with AI?
Oh yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think that's one of the long-term hopes and aspirations of applying AI in healthcare. I mean, there's a lot of talk about the democratization of care and more equitable application of care across across the population, for sure. And I think that you can also see, because the ability to scale some of these technologies will ultimately, I think, help in sort of the care provision for a greater number of people, for sure. Absolutely.
Got it. Now, we talked a little bit yesterday, too, leading up to the event, about the number of data scientists and hires that are being made in this industry, specifically for healthcare, to kind of bring about some of these changes. What does that kind of transformation look like? What are these scientists working on? And how many people are being added to try and make this change happen?
Yeah, so one of the things that we track within our team is looking at sort of the skill sets, and recently, we did see that particularly with large language models, in sort of the top 10 number, the companies with the most job postings for large language models, three of those top 10 were in the pharmaceutical sector, right? So we do see quite a bit of interest in the pharmaceutical sector in leveraging large language models. Also, there was a large healthcare organization also in the top 10 of our latest snapshot of 6 months worth of job postings. So, we can infer from that we're really seeing a ramping up of attention for AI in healthcare, which also corresponds with our sort of software spending forecast for the sector.
Understood. Andrew, it's been great chatting through all of this. I want to take a final look here as we close into the year of 2024. What big events and what big things, in your estimation, with the research that you do and the things that you're able to pay attention to, what things are on the forecast or on the horizon that you think investors, consumers, anybody that's interested in this industry and the transformational impact that AI is having, what should be on people's radar to pay attention to over the next year?
So I think I would be paying particular attention to the adoption rates of AI in the healthcare sector. I think that we're going to start seeing, like I said, a significant increase in spending, upwards of 40% of increase in spending by the healthcare sector in AI over the next year. I think obviously large language models and application of those models will dominate, and greater uptake of generative AI, particularly in the back office, if you will, of healthcare organizations in 2024.
No doubt. Andrew, really, really appreciate you taking the time to come here to the AI Titan Summit and share some insights about what you guys have learned at Omdia, telling us more about the AI transformation. Thank you very much for being with us.
Okay, thank you very much, Michael.